Hi everyone, it's Yehudis Fishman. I'm recording my very first Torah teaching video. I'd like to share with you what I feel is a profound teaching from Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, Kedushas Levi, famous student of the Baal Shem Tov, and he was known as the Bardarm Dicker, which means the compassionate one. And in fact, the rabbis say there's a special chamber in heaven in his name, and if somebody's in trouble, they should just say his name and his mother's name. That's Levi Yitzchak ben Sarasasha. So in the name of Levi Yitzchak ben Sarasasha, I am sharing his profound teaching about the contrast between Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Akiva, Moses and Rabbi Akiva. And I think it has some relevance for our times. So the teaching begins with a verse where Moshe is talking to Yisro, Jethro, his father-in-law, later on after the Torah was given. And he says to Yisro, please don't leave us, because therefore you know our camping in the desert, and you have been eyes for us. And it shall be that if you come with us, then with the goodness with which God benefits us, we will do good for you. So what does all this mean? And really, it's very strange that the Ten Commandments, the Torah portion of the Revelation, is actually in the same Torah portion that's named after Yisro, after Moshe's father-in-law. So he must have a really deep connection with the giving of the Torah. So the Kedushas Levi brings another very famous teaching from the Talmud Menachot. A rabbi say that when Moshe went up on high, he found the Holy One, blessed be he, tying crowns to the letters. He said to him, Master of the universe, who's holding you back? Who's holding back your hands is the actual wording. So God said, in the future, one man will arise. Akiva, the son of Yosef, is his name. And he will give a teaching on each thorn, mounds and mounds of laws. Now, thorn here refers to the crowns. It's called tagin. Sometimes they're translated as crowns, interestingly, and sometimes as thorns. But the little markers on top of some of the letters, and mysterious reasons why, but a Torah scroll needs to have those markers in order to be kosher. So Moshe says to God, show him to me. The implication is that Moshe didn't understand any purpose for the crowns, or didn't need the crowns. So God says, in line with an idea of Back to the Future, God transports Moshe ahead thousands of years, but he says, turn behind you. So Moshe turns around, and he doesn't know what they were saying, what the students there, he's transported to a yeshiva in the future. But again, the expression turning around is interesting here. And God says to him, Moshe really rather says to God, you have a person like him, and you're teaching the Torah through my hand. In other words, Rabbi Akiva is able to explain the meanings of all these different little markers on some of the letters, crowns that adorn some of the letters in the Torah, but Moshe has no idea what the meaning of the crowns are, what they're there for. So God says to him, it has entered my thought. In other words, to reveal the Torah through Moshe, but these crowns, the meaning of the crowns, through Rabbi Akiva. And Moshe says to God, and this is the really excruciating part, you have shown me his Torah, show me his reward. He showed him that the Romans were weighing his flesh at the end of his life in the marketplace. And here, this is referring to where Rabbi Akiva was tortured by the Romans, and actually his flesh was combed by iron combs till his soul expired. And then Moshe says to God, when he has this horrible vision, Master of the universe, this is the Torah, and this is the reward. And God again says to him, be silent, so it has come up in thought before me. So this is this very, really moving Talmudic teaching. And now Rabbi Levi Yitzchak is going to go on to explain it. So he asks a question like, what does it mean, who's holding back your hand? And what does this have to do with the tying of the crowns? So what does it mean to tie the crowns? And here, really, really, I think, a very, very profound teaching that Rabbi Levi Yitzchak says, when a person doesn't understand the subject of wisdom, and afterward, through the subject of one's investigation, when the person grasps and understands the topic and says it over, the pleasure that emerges from that realization, that understanding, is very, very deep. But a person who has a pure mind and is very sharp and his heart is very broad, I'm translating literally, and he understands the matter quickly and it's easy in the person's eyes, he says it simply without any happiness or joy. So Kedushas Levi is saying when you have to basically struggle to understand something and afterward you get it, you really, there's a tremendous sense of gratification. But if it comes very easily, you're happy about it, but there's not that deep joy that can come from that realization. So the letters that have crowns on them, not all the letters of the Hebrew alphabet have crowns on them. Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them have 3 crowns, some of them have 2, some have 1. But some of the letters that have special crowns on them are letters that have kind of a negative connotation. Some of the letters that spell out the Satan, Satan, and Az, like brazen or connected with a goat. These letters have 3 crowns on them, and other letters that have a more positive connotation don't have such a deep inwardness, and they have 2 crowns on them. So these lines are kind of like a what do you call it, an asterisk pointing, like pay attention especially to these letters, these words that comprise these letters. The lines show the importance of the subject that's concealed within them, which when one attains it provides a sense of importance and joy to be awakened. So he's saying Moshe was on such a high level that everything was simple and easy in his eyes, to the extent that even when it talks about the idea of the fear of God, which we're not talking about fear of punishment, we're talking about like a sense of awe, and the Torah says God is saying to the Jewish people, what does God ask from you but to fear him, but to have awe from him? And the rabbis, the Talmud says, is awe such an easy thing that God has said, it's only, God is just asking of you kind of a simple matter. And then the Talmud gives an answer, yeah, for Moshe, it's very easy. And then the rabbi said, well, what about for us? But that's a separate topic for another time. But the premise is here that for Moses, even the special awe that's connected with wisdom, it came very easily to him. And therefore, all the secrets of the letters were simple for Moshe to comprehend. And therefore, the idea that Moshe could not comprehend the crowns that point to the pleasure of understanding a matter that was previously hidden from him, because nothing really was that hidden from him. And obviously, so before God, there's no need for these crowns. And this is what Moshe is saying. Excuse me. Master of the universe, who's holding you back? Meaning the matter of these crowns is not found except with one who is held back from understanding, and then afterward understands, and then finds their significance and pleasure. But who's holding back you, your hand? Who can find on your level the matter of these crowns? So, like Moshe is saying to God, both I and you don't need these crowns. So what are the crowns all about? So what is God saying? In the future, a person will arise, and Akiva ben Yosef is his name. And we know Akiva was the son of converts and was also a shepherd in the beginning of his life. And only began to study Torah and even the Hebrew alphabet when he was 40 years old. And so God is saying that he is the one to grasp this importance because first it was hidden from him. And this is what is meant that in the future, Rabbi Akiva will teach about each thorn, meaning the thorn refers to the difficulty and the concealment in the matter, which is like a thorn. And that thorn is kind of sticks you, so you can't get to the flower so easily if the thorn is in the way. But the flower is like they understand the enlightenment that comes, but you have to go through the thorns to get there. And Moshe didn't need to, so in a sense, he didn't appreciate the flower so much. And then Rabbi Levi Yitzchak brings another kind of interesting sidelight or extended idea from this principle. This is the reason why, he says, in the days of Moshe, there were no boundaries and fences, positive and negative rulings in matters of Torah. So we have the 613 commandments, but we know through the ages there were many gezerot, decrees and extensions and boundaries and fences. And what are the purpose of the fences if they weren't included explicitly in the 613 commandments? So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak says, this was because these fences are responses to the difficulties, the challenges that come up in every generation from the Yetzer Hara, the negative inclination or the inclination toward evil, to escape from obstacles. And this is what's true for the generations that followed Moshe. And his generation, the generation of Moshe, is called the Dor Deah, the generation of knowledge. But in those days when Moshe and his generation were on such a high exalted level after the revelation, they didn't need these fences. And so he continues with this kind of conceptual framework. Behold, it is known that one who doesn't comprehend the question doesn't comprehend the explanation. And this is the idea that since Moshe and his generation were on such a high level and no opposition was known to them, they didn't need these fences and decrees. Therefore, the crowns on the letters weren't found within them. But with regard to Akiva ben Yosef and those like him in later times, they were able to explain the above-mentioned thorns, and this took a very great effort, and therefore they crowned the letters and gave them special significance. So the idea is that when either generations or individuals face obstacles either from within or from without, there's special engagement, the special support that's needed either from above or from other people, special assistance to be able to overcome those obstacles. And this is what the Kedushas Levi is saying, these extra decrees, like the Torah says, don't boil meat and milk together. But the rabbis added these extensions of don't have separate dishes and wait in between eating meat and milk, and all kinds of decrees about the laws of kosher, in order to make these kinds of extensions to stop people or to help people from overcoming any temptation to disregard or disobey these original decrees, kind of like a bumper, a speed bump, in order to not go over the speed limit. So back to the teaching, Moshe says to God, show him to me. And he said to him, on your level, it's impossible to see and comprehend these crowns if you don't go backward, meaning that you have to descend from your exalted level to a lower level of comprehension. So that's the idea of going back, even though he's going into the future, but going back means go down from your kind of high plane of explicit, clear understanding to a generation where things are much more difficult, both, again, individually and collectively, and then you'll understand the crowns. So he did this and still couldn't comprehend what they were saying because he still didn't understand the need for these extra kind of speed bumps, extra decrees. Because, again, Moshe was always in a place of clear vision, even when he had to go down from his level. So Hashem said, be silent, so it has gone up in thought before me. This means that these fences are needed. God is telling him these fences are needed by later generations who do have this a stronger Yetzer Hara, stronger inclination toward evil, and are kind of submerged, sunken into external thoughts and all kinds of distractions in a worldly way that weren't necessarily existent in earlier generations. Therefore, these fences are the crowns of the letters. In other words, they're extra teachings in order to help people, in order to elevate these external thoughts, as is known from many places and from many different teachings, that if a person is kind of praying or doing something good, studying Torah, and all kinds of distractions and obstacles come up, it's not meant to torment the person. It's meant for a person to engage kind of in battle, in combat with these forces, in order to, what the Kabbalists talk about, extracting the holy sparks. Because everything in existence, even evil, has a holy spark to them. But that spark, kind of like taking the pearl out of the oyster, or cleaning off the gold, so to speak, from the dross, needs to be engaged in with human beings. And so Moshe says, you have a person like this, you have a person like Rabbi Akiva who will do something so important for the Torah on the level of crowns, and yet you give the Torah through me. So in other words, why didn't you give the Torah through Rabbi Akiva? God, who's above time and space, can anticipate, the generations kind of sinking to this darker, more gross level. So why not give the Torah through Rabbi Akiva up front? So God answers, so it has entered in thought before me, meaning that there's when the thoughts are elevated, but before meaning from my perspective, the Torah has to be given through a person like you, who is kind of removed and aloof from being submerged in more material distractions. And this is because the Torah and God originally come from one place. And just as God is holy and set apart and separate from the life of this world, the giving of the Torah initially had to come to a person who is just as elevated as Moshe. So then God says to him, you showed me his Torah, showed me his reward. And he says, now that I see that the Torah that he will comprehend will come through him through great struggle and effort, it must also be, Moshe thought, he must have a very great reward, because there's a principle, according to the effort is the reward. But when Moshe saw they would comb his skin in the marketplace, he said, Master of the universe, this is the Torah and this is the reward. And God says, be silent. So it went up in thought. That's the expression. Allah b'machshava, went up in thought. And this, says the Kedushas Levi, is related to what the rabbis say when they took Rabbi Akiva out to be killed. It was the time to say Shema. Rabbi Akiva was actually saying Shema at the moment when he was dying, and his students said to him, to this extent, like, why do you have to go through so much torture? And Rabbi Akiva answers, all my life I was upset by the verse, and you shall love God with all your soul and all your heart and all your might. So that's what Rabbi Akiva responded to. And the Rabbi Levi Yitzchak adds, we understand that the student's question seems incomprehensible. So God is really, really telling him that Rabbi Akiva, at that moment, when a person really wants to get close to God, and he's kind of bringing some baggage from his background, consciously, unconsciously, willingly or unwillingly, those are the distractions that are pulling him away from it. And there's a term, Mesirat Nefesh, which means dedication of the soul, giving up your life literally, but really on a personal, ongoing level, it means being willing to encounter, have an experience of dveikut, of cleaving to God with your total mind and heart without any kinds of distractions. And sometimes, the Baal Shem Tov used to say, a person who is really, really davening, really praying the way they're supposed to, they might consider saying goodbye to their family before they pray, because the dveikut, the pull of the soul toward leaving the body in terms of reaching this higher spiritual realm is so strong that who knows if the soul is going to be able to stay or return to the body. And so really the students are asking him, like, did you need to really dedicate your soul to such an extent that you were ready to give up your life. And so he says to them, all my days I've been waiting to fulfill this expression with all your soul, even literally, because he knew that his whole life, even when he converted, he became totally observant, became the greatest teacher in Israel, but his past somehow was still there. And when he tried to pray fully with his whole heart, sometimes these distractions would come up, and he had to really fight to push away or transmute these distractions and to take out the holy sparks from them. And it's all this idea that he was the epitome of struggle. He was the epitome of a person in a condition where things are so hard and challenging for a person that the struggle has to take that much more, that much more input and dedication. And so this is what God was telling Moshe. So it has gone up in thought, meaning that God is saying that to elevate these thoughts to such a high level really is an amazing kind of activity that it's impossible for somebody like Moshe even to comprehend this. So now to kind of conclude and bring this back to the teaching about Yisro, about Moshe's father-in-law, and why really I think that, even though he doesn't say it here, why the whole revelation of Sinai has to be in conjunction with Yisro, who is in a sense kind of like Rabbi Akiva, who the Zohar says about Yisro that he went through all the various forms of idolatry. He tried out everything basically before he came to realization and appreciation of Judaism. So he went through his own personal struggle, very similar to Rabbi Akiva. So now Rabbi Levi Yitzchak is concluding, behold, God led Israel through the desert which was a desolate place and the dwelling of the klipot, like negative forces, in order that they would elevate the holy sparks there. And this is what Moshe is saying to Yisro. Don't leave us, because kind of like, again, like Rabbi Akiva, our camping in the desert is to elevate these sparks of holiness. And this work is concealed from me. I, Moshe, don't know how to engage and kind of get my hands dirty, so to speak. So you have to come with us and be our eyes. You should illuminate our eyes in this matter, since you were a priest to all the idolatries in this world, and you elevated yourself to the level where you can do this work. And this is why Moshe says, if you come with us, it will be good. Because it is known, says Levi Yitzchak, whenever it says good, it's referring to the hidden good, which is in the world of pleasure. And we began this whole teaching by saying, look, pleasure, true deep pleasure really can't be obtained except through one from whom understanding is hidden at first, like Rabbi Akiva. And this is where Moshe is saying to Yisro, from this good will come out. He gives another teaching at the end, but I'll try to summarize it because the time is getting short here. He's saying that he brings an amazing teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, actually. In the first blessing of Shemona Esrei, first blessing of the Amidah, we say, God is Gomel Chasadim Tovim. God bestows Gomel Chasadim Tovim, good kindness. And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak says, an amazing thought, he says, habit is the great destroyer of the wisdom of the Creator, his ability, and his kindness. For the truth is that when kindness is occasionally missing, and then they return and are renewed, then they are good. In other words, the good is recognized. Whereas if the good is coming constantly without any respite, it becomes no longer recognized because of the regilut, which means the habit. And in fact, maybe the word regularity comes from this Hebrew word regilut, which means like the trodden path, actually, literally, the regel that's continually walking. And so it is known that a continual pleasure is not pleasurable. And so too is that dynamic of the mind. When the mind is engrossed in something constant without interruption, sometimes it will become weaker and not comprehend. But when one rests periodically, then afterward, when he is aroused, he comprehends it at a more internal level. And this is how he ends by talking about this word gomel, which means bestow, also has a meaning of being weaned from. In other words, separated from. So really, it seems like a contradiction. How can gomel means give, bestow, and wean, which means take away from, hold back from. So the whole point that Levi Yitzchak is saying here is sometimes when we're held back from a blessing, some kind of shefa, a light that's coming, and understanding, something good that's coming into our life, we appreciate it more. It's basically like absence makes the heart grow fonder. So basically, this is the essence of the message of Reb Levi Yitzchak, but he's applying it to many other situations that people would not think of. He's saying that when we have deprivation in our life, whatever level, material, emotional, psychological, spiritual, and especially in our times when we're held back from accomplishing even all the good things that we want to do in full measure, we shouldn't feel that, like that's it. It's a total loss. It's a terrible situation, because not only is the good coming in the future, the good is promised to come afterward, that hopefully, God willing, this deprivation will end. But at the same time, the longing, the yearning that comes from this deprivation in itself is what's going to give us an opening to create a vessel within ourselves for much greater revelation than we've ever had before. So, God willing, this should happen to all of us individually, for communities, for the world, ultimately with the coming of Mashiach, the Messianic age, when this greatest good will be manifest throughout the world. Thank you.